Hello and welcome to the Our Prenup Lawyer podcast, where you and I get to learn more about prenups as I interview professionals from the fields of family law, couples counseling, and wealth management. I'm your host, Libby Garabedian. Let's get started. The information provided in this podcast is prepared by Our Prenup Lawyer for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship. This is not legal advice or a substitute for obtaining legal advice from an attorney. A person listening or watching should not rely upon it in any manner without engaging professional counsel. The podcast is intended to communicate general information and, because recorded, may not be current. On this episode of Our Prenup Lawyer, I'm joined by Tylie-Anne Lambert, aka the Aussie Love Lawyer. Founder and principal lawyer of Gaia Law, Tylie is an Australian solicitor, mediator, and collaborative family lawyer with a strong focus on legacy protection, family law, estate planning, and intellectual property. Through Gaia Law, Tylie combines strategic legal guidance with a modern client-focused approach designed to help individuals and businesses protect what they are building for future generations. Welcome, Tylie.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to meet you.
It's great to have you. You are our first guest on the podcast from Australia, and I'm excited to learn more about you and also how your legal system works. Let's start with your practice. How did Gaia Law get started?
Yeah, so Gaia Law is a holistic law firm. So we are also trained in breathwork and sound healing. So when we're going through family law cases, we feel like we can add a little bit of extra support to clients throughout the process. And then on the side, I have the Aussie Love Lawyer as a separate brand, and that's really focused on kind of fusing love and law together and really sort of drawing out all of my experience in love and also the prenup world.
I'm sure that extra support you offer clients really makes a big difference, especially when they're going through such a difficult time. And that approach you take there, how is it related to your overall mission with prenups?
Yeah, so this is something I'm really passionate about because, I feel like Hollywood's kind of given them a bit of a bad rap. And, in the movies, you see like, sign this prenup or I'm not going to marry you. And it's just not the case in my experience. I feel like, it's more of a conscious sort of healthy union I'm seeing when you can get a couple that can sit down and have hard conversations and come up with a financial plan. And I think that's a beautiful sign of their relationship. So my mission is really to kind of work through that, that fog that Hollywood's created and really try and set the example that it can be just a really healthy way to kind of put together an insurance policy for your love and, put together a way forward, a blueprint.
What made you want to get into prenups?
So my passion from family law actually came through my own divorce, and I went through the process, and I just felt like, it just felt nice to have that woman's touch and working with a female lawyer that I worked with. And I just was really interested in prenups, and I did one myself and went through the process. But then I kind of just was drawn to it, and I just really became fascinated with love throughout my own separation, wanting to kind of understand relationships and how they work and how they can break down and the healing process. So that's what really drew me to the area, was my own personal experience going through it. And then once, I got through it and I healed myself and all that sort of thing, I just felt like I wanted to offer my support to other people. So
that must be really empowering to use your own experiences to help your clients and be able to relate to what they're going through. When someone says, if you loved me, you wouldn't need a prenup, what's the real meaning under that statement?
I mean, instantly I start to think, it continues to be a theme that most people will argue over money, and they struggle with communication. These are two major areas that can lead to divorce. So I feel like if you're avoiding those hard things to begin with, then it might potentially be a red flag to even begin with before you enter the relationship. And then my lawyer kind of brain thinks, well, are they hiding things? And, how is this relationship going to play out if you can't even make a plan of how it's going to play out? So, yeah, I just feel like it could potentially be a red flag.
So that aversion can be a red flag in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll sort of start the prenup process too, and it's really interesting because they'll come back to me with the questionnaire and, say one of them will fill out all the full financial disclosure and it's all honest and it's there. And then the other party's like, well, I don't actually want to tell you my financial position. And it's like, well, that's an important part of the process. So yeah, once again, it can be a bit of a red flag. So
For listeners unfamiliar with Australian law, what exactly is a binding financial agreement?
yeah, so the way it works in Australia is, as you said, it's called a binding financial agreement. And the amazing part is you can enter it into one of those at any stage of your relationship. So if you're about to move in together, if you're about to get married, or even if you're already living together, or separating. So yeah, it applies at any stage. And that's the beautiful part because sometimes you'll get comments like, well, it's too late for a prenup because we're already married. And I'm like, well, actually, you can still do it. So, um, yeah, so I mean, some people refer to it in Australia as, the prenup still, but yeah, the legal term is binding financial agreement.
Wow, so binding financial agreement can act like a prenup or a postnup, but it can also do more. Can you walk us through what the drafting process would look like for two people who are moving in together?
That a lot, actually. So I find that one of them usually owns real estate, 9 times out of 10, and the partner's moved in already. And then maybe someone's got in their ear or they've kind of just realized, oh, I've just exposed myself financially. And what these allow you to do is just kind of pause and say, well, hang on, let's just set an agreement now that sure, you're allowed to live in my home, but should we separate, it's mine and you're not going to touch it. And that's the way that works. So it's really kind of an afterthought process because, obviously it's more ideal to do it before you move in because, it's a little bit more leverage and yeah. But yeah, you can certainly do it while you're living together as well. So that's a great question. So in Australia, you can either go through the court system through consent orders. And there's kind of two pathways, whether you already agree or whether you have to allow the court to decide. So there's that arm. And then the binding financial agreement, the post-nup, you can only enter into that if it's voluntary and if both parties, they're doing full and honest financial disclosure. So that's that pathway. In Australia, even if you agree on settlement terms and you have to submit it to the court might not think it's fair, so they could reject it. So yeah, so some couples might prefer the financial agreement if they agree on it, but they feel like the court wouldn't agree as well. So it adds that flexibility.
If a couple needs a separation agreement, how does that play out? What do you think are the most common mistakes people make when it comes to drafting or signing a prenup?
Oh, good question. Um, I've had a couple of instances that look a little bit like a Hollywood movie. So, um, yeah, so I mean, I had one client who I feel like it's more like their nervous systems kind of go into this fight or flight response, and they're like, okay, I need to do this prenup because I'm getting married next week. And I'm like, oh, next week. So it's the timing issue. So they'll either want to do it really close to the wedding, and I'll explain to them the risk that yes, you can enter into it at any stage of your relationship, but it's not going to look great in the court if you present it to, your potential partner the night before the wedding or, the week before. So how about, we just convert it to a during relationship one. Wait till you get married. Let's wait a few weeks. Just calm down. Everything's okay. And they're like, no, no, like they're not going to sign it and they freak out. So I'm like, all right, well, you've got to accept the risk that it might look like duress because that's one of the grounds that you can challenge it in Australia. So yeah, so it's really timing. It's not so much the terms, they're quite flexible in the agreements. And I really enjoy like really molding them to each individual relationship dynamic. Um, but yeah, it's really the timing, in my opinion. Like you just don't want to look like there's any sort of duress. So
Right. Not a, if you don't sign this, then the wedding's off kind of
yeah.
situation.
Because that's how it looks. Yeah. Like I actually had one client, keeping confidentiality, but just in the scenario that literally signed it the night before the wedding is, and I'm like, oh, I'm freaking out. Like, okay, well, send it to me. I've got to make sure it's signed properly. Like, I've got to make sure it's dated properly. And yeah, it's high pressure.
I know earlier you mentioned this Hollywood popular culture conception of prenups. Do you think social media has changed how people approach or talk about prenups and financial agreements?
That's what I love about social media. There's all these amazing sort of relationship coaches and love coaches and men's coaches and then also the lawyers that are talking about it as well. And I think that just the amount of information you can learn just on social media now is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, fusing those together like I like to do. And yeah, just I feel like we're all sort of moving more towards like these healthy, conscious unions, which is beautiful.
What advice would you give to couples who are trying to have those difficult conversations about their finances and futures together and how they can improve their financial literacy?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I will get an agreement on my desk, and someone will say, "Oh, the agreement's fine. I just need your sign off. I just need your certificate, and let's just get this done." And I'll read it and see all the red flags and write, a big advice letter. And I'm like, "Well, hang on, let's just pause because how about this scenario and that scenario and that scenario?" And once I start to have those conversations, they're like, "Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't think of that." And you see their mind starting to tick, and they might be starting to think, well, hang on, am I potentially being taken advantage of a little bit? And then I'll just say to them, like, remember, it's meant to be voluntary. You don't have to do this, and we can just slow down the process. So let's just take a pause and go back to your partner and renegotiate. And I find a lot that it can actually create quite a lot of conflict between couples while they're negotiating, whether it's before marriage or if they're living together already. But I think it's actually really healthy because they're having those really challenging conversations. And yeah, and I think it's good to also, you're opening up the apps on your phone of your banking and saying, well, this is my position, this is my position. And yeah, and then just negotiating a plan. I think that that's great just to have those conversations.
Right. Taking advantage of these opportunities to be upfront and transparent with each other. And why is it so important to consider long-term financial planning alongside relationship agreements?
And that's the thing, right? So when you sign these agreements, a number of things could happen. Someone could potentially, come out of work or they could have children, those sort of situations. And you've got to really realize that these agreements are designed to be legally binding. So even if these things do happen, yeah, you've got to consider that, potentially that could happen, and put you in more of a vulnerable financial position. So it's good to future tense them and kind of reality test them. And I go through clients with different scenarios. Um, and I also kind of encourage them to review them as a couple every, 3 to 5 years and really consider, is this still applicable to our situation? Because the nice thing is you can just terminate them and enter into a new one as well. So
And what does that termination process look like?
yeah, so in Australia, you can't change the agreement at all. So once you enter into it, that's it. So what you would do is say you're de facto and then you get engaged and you want to get married. We would just create a marriage agreement or, prenup, and there would just be a clause in there that says, this one is now terminated under the section of the Act. So it's quite easy. The other process is, say they're de facto and now they're going to get married and have kids and they decide, you know what, we don't want this anymore. You can actually just do a termination agreement by itself. So it's a very easy process.
Wow. So if a couple agrees, they can draft a new agreement to adjust to the different phases of life as things change. What is one thing you want listeners to remember from our conversation?
I want them to remember that, you've got to move this whole stigma of a prenup aside. It's not, cold and hard and unloving. I think that the thing that it gives me goosebumps is like thinking that having these hard conversations or making a financial plan is not love. I think that it's really scary, someone that wants to hide their finances and not want to have hard conversations, because I think that you know a prenup sets this beautiful foundation of a relationship, like this concrete slab that you can build a house on. And I think that, yeah, we've had these conversations, we've got a plan, and I think it's a really good sign of a healthy relationship. So,
But a prenup really is a tool meant to benefit everyone involved.
yeah, that's right.
With all the great information you've shared today, I'm sure there are listeners who want to learn more. So, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so I have two social media accounts, the Aussie Love Lawyer, and the other one is Gaia Law, Gaia. So I would love for you to follow along and support me, and I'll do the same for you.
Great. Well, we will include those in the show notes so listeners can reach you. And thank you again, Tylie, for being on the podcast. It was great speaking with you today.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much for having me.
That's our show, folks. Thank you for listening to our Prenup Lawyer. Make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to drop a comment below. Follow us on Instagram at Our Prenup Lawyer, and listen to us on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and watch us on YouTube. See you guys next time.